There's a robotic snake in space. I bet that got your attention. Well, there will be. It's one of the projects in the works by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The Exobiology Extant Life Surveyor, also known as EELS, is still in development, but its technology was recently tested here in Alberta on the Athabasca Glacier in Jasper National Park. Morgan Cable is the project's science lead. Hello.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. Now, a snake-like robot in space. Who thought of that?
It's kind of a funny story. A lot of these crazy ideas for new types of technologies, they start with just a simple meeting, a simple interaction. And one of the original engineers who started the project, Kalen Carpenter, he and I sat down and we're just brainstorming ideas of how to get to the hard to reach places, right? So right now, NASA has these incredible rovers that are driving across Mars that work really well for navigating sort of smoother terrains. But as we're starting to look for evidence of life in our solar system, we're finding that life may be in the hard to reach places, in cracks or crevices, maybe down in caves, places where traditional rovers can't go. And so we started thinking of, oh gosh, well, what kind of robot could we build that could reach those places? And that's how we arrived at this EELS robot, which, yes, it is a giant robotic snake.
So explain how this snake works.
This snake, it's a really cool idea. It's modular, right? So it has these cylindrical sections that each have their own separate rotating screw-like rings on them. And by rotating those in different ways, we can adopt different gates. So you may see gates that we can do that move sort of like a traditional snake does. But if you can think of sidewinders, some of these snakes that are able to kind of manipulate their bodies to move across sands and dunes and things like that, we can also do those type of gates. And we've been able to use these to push up against the walls. This is something that we were testing at Athabasca Glacier, going down some of the moulins, these tube-like structures of ice, the channels where water flows and goes underneath the glacier. We wanted to see if we could maneuver ourselves down inside those channels, and we were able to. It was really exciting.
Why was the Athabasca Glacier the right place to do this experimentation?
Athabasca Glacier met all of our criteria for being an ideal field site. Now, at NASA, we like to test our robots, our technologies in what we call analog environments, places that are similar to where we ultimately want to send these robotic explorers one day. Now, they're not going to be a perfect analog, right? Of course, Athabasca Glacier is not exposed to the vacuum of space, but it does have ice. It has all sorts of different terrain types. It's got, undulating terrain on the surface of the glacier. It's got these moulins and cracks and crevasses that go down inside, and it's really accessible. And that was a big plus for us because a lot of these pieces of the robot and full-on prototypes we were bringing with us are pretty heavy. They require some support equipment. And so it was really nice to be able to efficiently transport that onto the glacier so we could do these tests.
And let's talk about the actual name of this project, EELS. You're going to have to get into a little bit of detail on this because for us laymen, the idea of I think a space snake is as much as we can grasp onto in this incredibly complex project.
I totally get it. And this is, I think, one example of not just an acronym, but something we call a backronym, where we're thinking, oh, robot snake, EELS is a cool name for a snake. And how can we come up with an acronym that describes the project really well? And so we came up with this exobiology, which is basically life biology outside of Earth, outside of Earth. So exobiology extant life surveyor. Extant life is life that's here metabolizing alive right now, as opposed to extinct life. And when we are searching for evidence of life as we know it or as we don't know it out in other places in our cosmic backyard, we will do different tests to look for extant life versus extinct life. And so we wanted to focus on the life that's here now, we think, maybe in some of these interesting places in the solar system.
So what's the likelihood that we're actually going to see robotic snakes or one of these EELS in space?
Well, one of the great things that I love about working for the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab is we're always thinking many steps ahead. A lot of the technologies that you see, for example, on Mars or on the moon or other places right now, were developed very, very early on. And that's where we are with this EELS project. We're demonstrating technology, a lot of really critical components. We're testing them now in separate pieces and together with hopeful plans to be able to get these to other places in our solar system in the future. There aren't any solid plans right now to specifically launch EELS somewhere, but the point is to get the technology ready for these future opportunities and have it tested and proven first.
Why did you start with the idea of exploring a moon of Saturn, though?
Oh boy. So there are a lot of really fascinating places in our solar system, and this one moon of Saturn, Enceladus, is definitely top of my list. It is what we call an ocean world. So this is one of these moons that has a liquid water ocean underneath a shell of ice. Now, there are other worlds that are like Enceladus in that respect. Europa around Jupiter is a good example. Titan, Triton, which is around Neptune. But Enceladus is unique because it has these four giant cracks in its south pole through that ice shell, and stuff from the ocean is spewing out into space. It's basically the universe's way of saying, hey, NASA, you want to find out if there's any life in this ocean? Swing on by, free sample. And so this one is particularly interesting for us because we think a robot like EELS would be the ideal design. And in fact, we actually used this moon to define what the diameter of those segments of the robotic snake, how wide they could be be able to go down into one of those cracks and access that ocean without the need to dig or drill.
When you were testing in Jasper, then, what did you learn?
Oh, we always learn something new whenever we take our robots and test them out in the field. The idea is that we want to make them robust and able to withstand any sort of unknowns that we might not anticipate in these environments. And doing field work is a great way to do that. So we were able to test two key aspects of the robot. One that we call horizontal mobility. So this is being able to essentially slither along the surface, go around obstacles, as well as vertical mobility. So that's going down a moulin, pushing against the walls, and being able to move up and down against the forces of gravity. So that was really important on the engineering side. But also on the science side, we were able to do and learn some really cool things. So we brought with us a couple of instruments to help map the inside of those end glacial conduits, those moulins and things inside the glacier. And we also brought a new prototype instrument that can taste the salts in the meltwater of the glacier. And this is as a scientist, something that was important to me was to be able to contribute to earth science and understanding how Athabasca Glacier fits into sort of the global context of climate change and glaciology, and be able to contribute there as well.
Just before we let you go, now this is not the only NASA project you're involved with. Others include the Mars 2020 rover mission and Dragonfly, the rotorcraft that is going to Saturn's exotic moon Titan. This interest in space, though, for you, where does it come from? Where did it originate?
Oh my gosh. Well, I grew up on the other side of the United States in Florida, right next to Kennedy Space Center. And so rockets were just going off in my backyard as a kid growing up. And I guess that has an impact on a young mind. And so I was always interested in space and exploration. And then when I started studying science in college, I realized that there were so many questions that we didn't have answers to yet. And if I studied chemistry and I started to ask those questions and ended up working for a NASA center like JPL, that I could help find those answers. And it's been a really incredible experience. I was lucky enough to do a summer internship, and anyone who's interested in working for NASA or ESA or the Canadian Space Agency, I recommend doing an internship and getting your toes wet. Go out there and ask some questions, and you'll be pretty impressed with your ability to find the answers.
Well, I'm very impressed with the answers you were able to provide for us today. Morgan, thank you for this.
Thanks so much. Stay curious.